my point is that when you're debating with people who are atheists, is there not a point that you think to yourself, look, like Allah says in the Quran, "O Muhammad, whoever I guide, no man can lead. You cannot lead astray. Whoever I lead astray, no man can guide." Right? And so, at what point do you say to yourself, "Look, I'll probably explain it to him logically. He probably does accept it, even if he's removed his arrogance, because I know arrogance and ego in debates are a big thing." But look, he just hasn't got that feeling in his heart. At what point do you just leave the discussion?
Well, you shouldn't leave. You should just change your approach. Like, people assume that you have this rational algorithm, and then if you follow these steps, it would lead to someone having faith.
Fine.
That is ridiculous.
Okay.
Like, even just from experience, from a traditional point of view, from an Islamic source text point of view, from our own epistemology, how we understand knowledge and truth, it doesn't make sense. It's so incongruent. It's against what has been taught traditionally for over 1,000 years. Reason does not lead to Iman, faith, believing in Allah. Yes, we can use it to prove in an abstract way, but you can know something to be the truth and not actually internalize that truth, yeah? So, and even our approach to atheists or humanists or skeptics is totally wrong. We think we have to give them some kind of like abstract cosmological argument or some scientific evidence or some... He's a human being, for God's sake. He's not an intellectual zombie or robot. Yeah. You're going to, have you seen The Matrix? You're going to plug something behind his head and now he knows Kung Fu.
Right.
They're human beings. And that's why we don't get along with people, because we share Islam. We convey Islam to our judgments, not to the person. So if John the atheist came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm John, I'm an atheist," what happens in my mind? What happens in my mind is this: let me now try and prove him wrong because he must be evangelical with his science and he must require some scientific evidence. He's probably like a farty-arty student, has no idea about science, and he's only an atheist because his mum passed away when he was 3 and he's got no answers. But you would never know that about him because we're so arrogant. We share Islam, we convey Islam to the judgments of who we think people are, not who the person really is. We need to come as a blank canvas to people, but we don't do that.
Yeah.
So in my experience, when I do try and plant the rational seed in people's hearts and minds, when they respond with really silly questions and they want to split the philosophical hair, that for me is an indication that it's got nothing to do with reason, it's to do with psychology. And then I shift it and say, let's get a pizza. And then you connect with them like a human being. But what we do, and especially Speaker's Corner, unfortunately, is like that. You got to refute him, bruv. Yeah? He gave you some crazy question like, what was God doing for eternity before he created the universe? Why do you think you have to answer that? Frankly, it's an idiot. That's how we say in Hackney. Yeah? Okay, it's fine. An idiot who thinks that they have to answer all the question. If you think you have to answer all the questions, frankly, you're a fool. Yeah. Even Allah doesn't answer all the questions. In actual fact, if you read the Quran, Allah teaches you how to question, not to get an answer.
SubhanAllah, I was going to bring this up with you. SubhanAllah,
So the Quranic strategy is like a Socratic strategy in many ways, which Allah asks you the questions, even if it's rhetorical questions. Because if you ask the right questions, it would inevitably lead to the right answers. So we should, instead of trying to think, superimpose our egos on people and think, here's an answer, let them think. If you teach someone how to think, bro, it's far more powerful than giving them an answer. Just like, if someone's starving and they need food, don't give them a fish. Teach them how to fish. Yeah. So that's why I said we should become benevolent teachers in a way. Teach people how to critically think.
And how do you do that?
Just asking them questions.
Teach people how to think by asking them
asking the right questions, right?
That's very interesting, John. What if I were to ask you this and then give the question? What would you say about that? What do you think the implications are? And that's important. So we think that everything is a rational process. Not. We're human beings. We're like a cocktail of different things. We're a bit of reason, a bit of emotions, a bit of instinct, a bit of innate nature, a bit of everything. And this is in line with Islamic epistemology. So the view I follow is that we have some first principles. The fitrah. You probably heard of the fitrah before, yeah? The famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim when he said every child is born in a state of fitrah. This comes from the Arabic triliteral stem fatara, which you have words like fatrun and fatrahu. Like something has been created within us to acknowledge Allah and to glorify Him. That's the first principle is non-negotiable. So that's our fitrah. But if you study the hadith further, it's parenting and society that changes that disposition. It clouds the fitrah. Our job is simply to uncloud the fitrah.
Okay, I understand.
And so it awakens the truth within. I know it sounds like Yoda, yeah?
No, it makes a lot of sense.
So our job is to plant the seed or uncloud the fitrah to awaken the truth within. Now the question is, what unclouds the fitrah?
Right.
People think it's just reason and science. No, it's not.
But for different people, it's different things.
I think it's a combination of things for many people. It could be reason, a bit of reason, planting the seed intellectually. It could be just being a really decent human being, which we lack sometimes, yeah? It could be buying him pizza or her pizza. It could be getting them to pray. Like I believe I became Muslim because I started praying. I started praying before I became Muslim. And many reverts that I speak to, converts that I speak to, they knew Islam was true in an abstract way, but they weren't Muslim. But they became Muslim and they started to practice the tradition. And that's why, for me, scholars like Al-Ghazali, the 11th century theologian, he was called the proof of Islam, not because he had proofs for Islam per se, but because his life was a proof of Islam. And if you study his life has a lot to tell us today. I think his life is an ayah. It's a sign for us because, he studied philosophy, then he wrote the book Tahafut al-Falasifa, the incoherence of the philosophers. Then he went all into this kind of intellectual exercise. And at the end, what did he say? A rational algorithm is not going to lead to iman, faith. What's going to lead to you knowing God exists in your heart and soul is actually internalizing the teachings, and then you just know. And this is very powerful. It's more of an existential approach rather than a rational approach. An existential approach is, what does it mean for me? How do I internalize, for example, the sunnah? And when the Prophet said this and I practice it, did it work? If it worked, then you know it's true. You've experienced that truth, yeah? So, I think I'm going off on a rant here. But anyway, the fitrah aspect, lots of things awaken the fitrah. A lot of things uncloud the fitrah. It could be reason, it could be negative experiences, a death in the family, spiritual experiences. Oh yeah, it could be just praying, as I said. It could be all of those things. And we don't know what Allah will use to awaken the truth within someone. Do you see?
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of this. Say, hypothetically, I had to clean up my mum's basement. I'm 37 years old. I'm cleaning my mum's basement. And in the corner of the room, I see this dusty old school bag. The zip is very rusty. I open the zip and I find in the bag my old toy of Donald Duck. Yeah? Right? Donald Duck. And what happens to me? I forgot all about my favorite toy when I was 5 years old, 32 years prior. But the minute I see it in my mother's basement, what happens to me?
You remember it all?
I go, oh yeah, that was Donald Duck, bro.
Yeah.
My favorite toy. This is exactly how Muslims should be. We should remind people what they already know, the basic principles of there is a creator and that he deserves glorification and praise.